so far away. Everybody has to stay in one place anymore. It would be so fine to see your face at my door. Doesn't help to know you are just time away. Long ago I reached for you and there you stood. Holding you again could only do me good. How I wish I could, but we're so not all people have a way to connect virtually. Missing some faces, feeling very melancholy. Doesn't help to know we are just time away. Recently we used to lift our voices in song. Holding hands together back then never felt wrong. How I wish we could. Far away, far away. We're so far away. We're so far away.
Thank you so much, Candy, for that real sentiment. So we are far away in distance from each other, but still, and as ever, it is good to be together. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Carbondale Unitarian Fellowship, our member congregation, the Unitarian Universal Association of Congregations, sharing the good news of unity with folks throughout Southern Illinois. Our good news is a message of love, freedom, reason, respect, and justice as a basis for religious community. I'm Reverend Sarah Richards, minister here at Carbondale Unitarian Fellowship, and I am very happy to be here with all of you this morning to welcome you all, to remind ourselves and to those who might be new that we are a congregation of open minds and open hearts, all ages, all colors, all genders, all kinds of wealth, and all kinds of love. If you are I'd like to extend a special welcome to you, and we're so glad that you're here with us. Please introduce yourself in the chat or during our online coffee hour, which follows directly after the service. Now I invite, I'm gonna switch, if you're not already on gallery view for a moment, I'm gonna switch it and invite everybody to wave to each other, making connection with each to see you all. It's wonderful. All right, this month, friends, we are asking ourselves what it means to be a people of renewal. I'm very happy this morning to welcome a guest minister, our guest minister, Reverend K. Mooney, who will invite us to renew our liberal religious principles through creating brave space right here at our fellowship. Reverend Mooney is a lifelong UU, and she's currently the sabbatical minister at the UU Advocacy Network of Illinois, UUANI. Her portions of the service have been pre-recorded, but she'll be joining us live during coffee hour. So I hope you can stay on. You may have just noticed that we have opened the doors, the front doors of the fellowship, this morning to increase our ventilation. And so sometimes you might get a little bit of background road noise on Parish Lane. But just remind you that we're in this world. We're not hermetically sealed, even though it might seem like that when we're online. So let's begin with our chalice lighting, these words by Reverend Mooney. I invite you to light your chalice at home, as we will be lighting the chalice here after the video.
Good morning. We light our chalice, the symbol of our faith, with these words this morning. Come into this house of questions with your answers held in an open hand. Come into this house of peace, knowing here you may be seen and affirmed. Come into this place of thought and word and deed, and bring your imperfections. Bring your whole self. Bring your fiery spirit and breath. Oh, fiery spirit, come burn in us. Oh, sacred breath, come breathe in us. Oh, fire of love, come burn in us. Fiery spirit, fiery spirit, come, come.
I have lit our chalice here at the fellowship. I hope you have or are doing the same at your home. And now I will drop a pebble into our bowl of water here with intentions for this time together, letting those intentions ripple out into this space and beyond to all of you and beyond. And I invite you, if you're at home and you have pebbles and a bowl of water that you put the pebbles in the bowl of water anytime during the service to mark your intentions or to mark a joy, a sorrow, or anything that you might be feeling during the service. Again, on the theme of renewal, some of you may know that now, just beginning last year, we are now renewing our commitment as a fellowship as an LGBTQ welcoming congregation. We used to, the renewal process used to be open for whenever, which in our case was about 19 years. And now the UUA has made a really great new process. So that we're annually renewing that commitment. This is an opportunity to learn and grow as a fellowship. This Wednesday, September 23rd, is Bisexuality Day. Now, I should say it's a day for celebration. Here's an excerpt from the GLAAD blog post on the history of bisexuality in the US. Today, more and more people are opening up about being part of the bisexual plus community. Bisexual plus people make up more than half of the LGBTQ community. Research also finds that Americans experience attraction to or have been involved with individuals of more than one gender, even if they don't identify as bisexual. Present-day bisexual plus advocates define bisexuality to embrace all genders, including non-binary people. In the words of leading bi advocate Robin Oakes, "I call myself bisexual because I acknowledge that I have in myself the potential to be attracted romantically and or sexually to people of more than one sex and or gender, not necessarily at the same time, not necessarily in the same way, and not necessarily to the same degree." People are also using additional or alternative words to describe their identities under the bisexual plus umbrella, such as fluid and queer. People continue to come out as bisexual plus every day. Bisexual plus leaders are at the forefront of the broader LGBTQ movement, and the visibility of the bisexual plus community has never been greater. Friends, we owe it to ourselves and to our faith to educate ourselves about bisexuality. And that's not all. We owe it to ourselves and to our faith to show our support and love for the bisexual plus people in our community and families. So this Wednesday, let's make a cake, post on social media, however you'd like. Let's celebrate Bisexuality Day. Now I invite you to join in singing the hymn sung by Stephanie Reese, and the words are on the screen.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound.
friends, now is the time in our service that we share our sorrows and joys, pains and gratitudes, milestones in fellowship. We today, especially some of us, come with heavy hearts for the loss of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And there have been many, many prayers lifted up for her family and, frankly, for a grieving country. And I think that it's appropriate that we just take a moment of silence to remember her legacy, and also just the promise that she gave not just women in this country, but all people by her example. Blessed be, may her memory live on in our own lives and our own work for justice. We know that that is just one of our sorrows that we're bearing this morning. We know that some of us come with especially heavy hearts for loss or other griefs, and we open our hearts to them. If any of you have a sorrow or deep personal concern that you would like to please raise your hand and unmute yourself. And if you're not screen sharing, unmute yourself so that we can know that you're ready. Do you have one? Okay. Candy has a sorrow that she'd like to share.
Yeah, I have a concern. I've got a bit of a dilemma going on in my life right now. I've been taking care of this little cat while Christine is gone. And he lives outside, but he comes in to her kitchen to eat so the other neighborhood cats don't bother him. And we already have a cat, but John and I have been considering adopting this little guy. But there's just a lot of logistics involved that are just kind of hanging me up. And then I also found out that there is a plan B. There's a farm that he could go live on. Christine's going to be building a barn for somebody who wants a cat also. And so I'm at a crossroads as to what to do. Do I try to introduce him to our old cat and going to do, or do I just let go of it and hope that he does okay on this farm? So that's my concern.
Go ahead, Linda.
Okay. My concern, of course, as the rest of you are too, I'm certain, for the fires that are taking place on the West Coast and all of the people in harm's way, and also the fire worker community, this massive group of unselfish human beings who are trying to save lives and land I'd like us to lift them all up and hold them in our hearts.
Would anyone else like to share a sorrow or deep personal concern? Okay. Well, in this time of grief and mourning, in this time of dilemmas, what is the right thing to do? A question that all of us grapple with daily. We look also to those moments of gratitude and to those glimmers of hope and experiences of joy. Help make our grief and our dilemmas help make them be in a wider context of a larger way of seeing and being. And so I invite anyone who has a joy or a gratitude that they would like to share to go ahead and unmute yourself, raise your hand or unmute yourself and share. Oh, go ahead, John.
I would like to say a couple of words of gratitude about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. There's, of course, great sadness at her passing and a great deal of concern and consternation about what is to come in the next few days, weeks leading up to the election, as some people are mobilizing to try to ram through a Supreme Court appointment, and others are mobilizing to oppose that till after the election. I've been thinking mostly in reading, especially Linda Greenhouse's wonderful obit in the New York Times, and if you haven't read it, contact me and I will share it with you. There's an old adage about the pen being mightier than the sword. This woman, this giant intellectually, was a small physical person, and yet she strode the earth for great physical strength, but for her soul strength and her intellectual strength in recognizing, strategizing, and advocating how to spread power out among people in ways that they had not even imagined for themselves. The literature of the disempowerment of women before her is legendary, and many of you are more familiar with it than I. But what she did was so much more than the law. It was to provide a focus upon which not only women, but all of us could recognize that there's an inner source of dignity, strength, passion, and responsibility to all of us, that each of us, worthiness of each and every one of us, women, blacks, whites, yellows, reds, browns, gays and straights, north and south, rich and poor, and by the force not of her physical power, but by the force of her soul power, she was able not only to convince judges and politicians, but to convince women and men here in the United States and abroad that each one of us has an internal value, a necessary contribution to be made, and the biggest contribution of all is for each of us to individually recognize that each of us is worthy, and to spread that sense of worthiness around. No matter what happens politically, the fact that in this congregation, all these women are standing up. All over the world, women have been standing up, and that she will forever be celebrated as one of the giants, despite the fact that she was 100 pounds on her heaviest days. The giant was not in the physical stature, it was in the voice, in the thinking, and in the leadership she provided to all of us to say, you can do this too, you're responsible too, now get out there and do it. And for that, I will be eternally grateful to her. Thank you. And it's joyous.
Thank you, John. Does anyone else have a joy or a gratitude to share this morning? Looking. Okay. Well, oh, go ahead, Jody.
I'm a little hesitant to share this joy just in the hugeness of everything going on, but I do think it kind of speaks to, I don't know, something a little bit larger, as do every joy and sorrow, really. So I am a new grad student and also new at teaching, college age adult students, but I am teaching one class and they're freshmen, and it's a very beginning studio, artwork studio. And the section that I'm teaching is meeting by Zoom one part of the week, one day a week. And then the other day a week, I've really kind of just felt it personally kind of as an imperative to have them meet to some degree face to face. And so we've been able to pull it off. And so we had a big project, or they had a big project that was due, that they would have gone to a lot of trouble to create a little bit more detailed drawing, so to speak. And so it just so happened that the weather worked out well. We had been meeting when we were meeting face to face in groups of 4 or 5, and that was completely fine. But because the weather had worked out and we were preparing for a larger group critique, we were able to meet outside. So we met on the steps of Shryock. There was, I think, 8 of us, completely masked, distanced, and each student would take a turn and stand up in front of the steps where we were all sitting and present their work that they had completed and talk about the students learned how to critique and each other constructively, and also speak about their own work that they had done constructively. And I just have to say that, I think for good reason and understandably, there continues to be real nervousness, if not sometimes I've heard the words used, being terrified, for instance, to go on campus. And I have my own thoughts about that, but I just you know, the feeling of delight from the students to just have the opportunity to see each other and just talk and catch up and just experience each other as human beings. I mean, it was just overwhelming. I was so glad to be able to offer that to them, and it was a beautiful day, and it was great. So anyways, that is truly my joy today, is just to just share that it's so meaningful to just try to see each other in person somehow, some way, just to continue to strive to try to do that while the weather is nice, honestly.
Thanks, Jody. Before we move on, I want just to invite Dee Evans to wave to everybody. Dee is one of the interns that will be working with CUF this year, and she'll have a chance to introduce herself during the coffee hour after the service. So that's a joy for the fellowship, for sure, to share. For all of the sorrows, the losses, the uncertainty that we shared aloud, for all of the joy and appreciation that we shared aloud, and for all of those feelings and milestones that remain in our hearts. We lit candles, and now we'll share a moment of silence. May it be so. Just as we share our sorrows and joys in fellowship, we share our financial resources with the congregation as our circumstances allow. During this pandemic, some folks are experiencing hardship. Others are relatively unaffected, financially at least. We appreciate the generosity of spirit, of time, of effort, and money of all during these challenging times. That means each and every person, for the good works of the fellowship within the congregation and beyond. Your checks written to CUF are much appreciated, and now you can donate online. Yahoo! It's been a long time coming. You can donate online via PayPal. You can get all the details in the email announcement that came this morning, or in the bulletin. And don't forget that Social Action Sunday is now all month long. We should just call it Social Action Month. This month, Advocacy Network of Illinois is our recipient. You can donate via PayPal and put UUANI in the notes box, or write a check to CUF and write UUANI on the memo line. Now, let's breathe deeply and maybe make our plans, or push that button or write that check as we listen to the offertory, an original song by Candy.
This is called Lady with Her Lamp by the Sea. Lady with a lamp near the harbor, a symbol of democracy. Her torch held high, she's welcome all for more than a century. With give me your tired, your poor, and hope in a brand new land for liberty and opportunity, ideals for which she stands. I watch as the people in power try to shut our democracy down with voter suppression, indefinite detention, and election of a corporate clown, and his blustering boasts and intentions of building an enormous wall and peddling hate as he violates the Bill of Rights for us all. And the people we gather one by of our towns, we speak for others, oh sisters and brothers, for wisdom to surround us all. Our voices join, we stand for the right to speak and assemble in peace, and worship as we wish, as promised by Our Lady with her lamp by the sea. A single raindrop in a stormy sky, till more drops started to fall, became like a trickle in a tiny stream, and our numbers the waters did swell to a mighty river that ripples and roars, tosses logs aside like straws, as millions unite for human rights and justice for one and all. And the people we gather by the millions in cities outside the halls, sisters and brothers, build bridges and tear down walls. Our voice is huge, we stand for our rights, for happiness and harmony, and refugees once more welcomed by Our Lady with her lamp by the sea. And refugees once more welcomed by Our Lady with her lamp by the sea.
And now Reverend K. Mooney will offer our reading and our message for this morning.
Our reading today is Brave Space by Mita Hellman and myself. Be brave. It is no longer enough to be safe, to want safe space. These times call for more than safety. They call for bravery, for brave space. The bravery of those who have never needed to be brave is what will finally force change. Those of us who benefit from privilege must use our voices, our bodies to demand change. We must be brave enough to disobey laws that are unjust, brave enough to listen and speak, brave enough to follow those who have been crushed as they now begin to lead. To end marginalization and inequity, we must be courageous enough to question the laws and traditions that have created disparity in education, housing, wages. Only when we take courage and act to force that change will there finally be justice for those who have been other, for those who have for all these years stood on the outside of the circle of power. Let us no longer be content with safety. Let us ask for more than sanctuary or refuge. To reach peace and justice, let us be brave. Many of our churches and community groups deal with this dilemma. Are we safe havens for people in need, or places that encourage one another to spiritual and emotional growth? Are we sanctuaries for people who feel like refugees from a world where we do not fit? Or are we places where we can encourage the often uncomfortable work of being brave instead of safe? Brave so that others can be safe. The term safe space comes from the 1970s when spaces were created within the LGBTQ communities for people whose very existence was threatened. Safe spaces were places where people could affirm their experiences, regroup, recharge, and go out again. I know that people at Carbondale Unitarian know about the challenges of life and change. Everyone needs a safe haven. Perhaps most especially in a community that can at times feel at odds with our UU values. But to claim safe space when your life is not threatened means you are claiming the right to be comfortable all the time. No challenges, no confrontations. Today we're going to talk about creating spaces which instead help us to become the people we say we want to be. Spaces beyond safe. Spaces we'll call brave. A brave space is anywhere people agree to be introduced to new ideas or orientations, to take risks, trying on new ways of thinking and being in the world, to be called out or called in. A brave space is not devoid of fear or challenge, certainly not a place of perfection and known outcomes. Instead, it is a place where with compassion, we welcome difference. Cultivating brave space is the lived examination of what we know. You know, those things that we don't even suspect our beliefs until we're faced with a different truth, like the results of an election, or being asked to sit next to someone with different access to personal care, or asking somebody about what it is that they think their taxes should be. Brave is being uncomfortable. Brave is learning to examine our fears, testing the limits of our beliefs and ideas so we know what's real, and we know how that real thing changes. Even bravery is strengthening our listening and following muscles. I think brave spaces are really important in this time, in particular in this election year, when we advocate to be able to, for our country and our state and our city, to hear what is needed by the all. Where are those places here that we can have conversations that are difficult, where people might have differences of opinion, but still we have a space where those differences can be heard in honor? I want to start by telling you a story about brave space and how I came to know my own need for it. As a few of you know, along with being a sabbatical minister for the UU Advocacy Network, I also work with the UU Prison Ministry of Illinois. I was there as their minister, and now I'm there as a volunteer. The prison ministry engages folks who are locked up. When I worked for UUPMI about 5 years ago, the first ministerial request that I got was to perform a wedding for 2 men living at Rushville Detention Center. Initially, I was sort of exhilarated. I thought, this is exactly the kind of work I want to be part of, affirming the humanity of people who've been locked away, listening and bearing witness to their stories, affirming their part in the web. They are not forgotten. I got my uppity on. But then I found out that Rushville is a detention center for people who have served their prison sentences for sexually violent crimes, are deemed too dangerous to be released without treatment. Oh, I'm ashamed to say, it took me 6 weeks to answer that initial letter, as I wrestled with what it means to marry people who have profoundly hurt others in such personal and sometimes incurable ways. My family has a history. I have a history, like so many women who came forward in the Me Too movement. I have a story to tell about sexual violence that I survived, and this weighed on me. In a space made for me by this request, I grappled with the uncomfortable truth that I wanted to help people who were locked up, but apparently I wanted to help the mother who stole milk for her baby, or the person who'd been charged with murder because they loaned someone their car, or maybe the person who did batter and kill but was out of self-defense. How could I help those convicted of sexually violent crimes? After quite some time and a lot of conversation with people who had worked in the criminal justice system for way longer than I had, I finally found my clarity. All true crime is an abuse of power, using domination to control circumstances and people. The type of crime committed doesn't lessen my obligation to see and respect anyone's humanity, even if they had abused power, because certainly I have abused power in my life. I would like to say that that was all that it took, but it was still 2 months before I met that first couple. There were all kinds of convenient excuses. Rushville is a 4-hour drive from Chicago. It's 4 hours from Carbondale as well. It was difficult to fit that 4-hour, 8-hour trek in my 10-hour work week. I needed buy-in from UUPMI folks. To be honest, though, the real reason was that I was still struggling. Every time I took a step towards the criminal justice system, my safe worldview was rocked. I once knew that the system helped make society safe. Now I know that it serves mostly to allow some folks, people who look like me, to maintain an illusion of safety and comfort. The prison industrial complex is very different from what I believed. Working and listening and being in arguments and conversation came at the price of eviscerating my very white, very middle class understanding how everything works. Within the prison industrial complex, malice is inherent in the system, well beyond simple disrespect and disregard. There's simple things like the chairs have carpet squares for feet. There are harder stories of correctional officers berating and threatening those people locked up in our presence for no discernible offense. Harder still, people who tell the story that they were told they should try harder next time when they cut themselves in an effort to feel something. People are stripped of their humanity without being concerned with the societal forces at the heart of their plight. Wealth gaps, healthcare, racism. Rushville is called a detention center, but it is every bit a prison. The facility surrounded by tall gates and concertina wire on top of walls that string for miles. It felt like they have solitary. Inmates there receive therapy to rehabilitate them, but there's no clear set of rules by which they'll retain their release. While people get a hearing if a therapist deems that they're ready, they then go before a judge in the county where they caught their case, and that judge is the one who says, I agree with that determination or not. Some judges never give this population their freedom, making a conviction a life sentence without recourse, without anyone noticing, without the outside population even knowing that this place exists. And still, this happens because many of us believe that individuals here are the worst of the worst. No one that any decent person should worry about, right? Even though new research on treatments and outcomes refutes the notion that came up in the early 90s that high recidivism rates are there for those who are sexually violent. After grappling with these horrific details, I finally found myself driving to meet a couple to talk about being married. Moving into brave space made for me by people who were still locked up. I was continuing to move into that brave space. People like M, one half of the first Rushville couple, who boldly sued the system and said, I am here, I am human, I will be seen. His courage and that request to be married allowed me to learn. He stepped out to test the limits and braved the very real threats of retaliation from authorities at Rushville. He won not only for himself, but for others. Because of M, I was able to see my knowings and grow in to be open to new possibilities which hadn't been visible before. Because of their initial courage, I was able to stand with him in solidarity despite my own baggage. These folks at Rushville have found love. Even during great calamity, they are clear about that. It was me who wrestled with my lightweight affirmation of our first principle. It was me. I can do this work because of the brave space that was created for me by someone else. We all need others to create and engage brave space. It is not work that an individual can do. We have to have others who surround us, who help us to grapple with what is rather than what we think things should be. There was this study done by a psychologist named Solomon Asch. He discovered that people will follow a crowd even when they know it's wrong. This is why we need to do this together. Because when we come upon something that is wrong, oftentimes the crowd that surrounds it is really strong, and we don't want to go against the grain, even Unitarian Universalists. This study by Solomon Asch was, he found that people are seemingly hardwired, many of them, to follow what their crowd says. He created these experiments where people were asked to make simple observation. How long is a line? Here's a line, here's a line, here's a line. He drew these lines on a paper, and people were supposed to identify shorter, longer, shorter, longer. He brought in actors, though, that would say the exact opposite. This is the long line, this is the short line. The person that was brought in to agree or disagree, 65% of the time went along with the actor's assessment. This is the long line, this is the short line, even when it was incorrect. It is really hard to separate yourself out from a crowd, especially your crowd, even when you can tell something obvious. As humans, we want to go along. We want to find our place, and when we found it, we want to keep it. But Asch found this other interesting correlation. If even one person disagreed with the crowd, the research subject would also hold their ground. If one of the actors, the 20 actors here saying long, short, only one of them said short, come on, the person would hold their ground. He called this person the true partner. When we find a true partner to challenge the status quo and affirm our vision, we're much more likely to stand up for what we know is true. M and their partner were willing to stand up against a system which said that they were not worthy of respect and dignity. And I was able to step into that brave space as a true partner as well, because they made the brave space for me to step in and be with them. As a community of freethinkers, I wonder if we can practice our true partner skills to advocate for brave spaces where we and others can develop those muscles to help us stand with and stand up and be in solidarity even when we feel like we're all alone, so that we can find the other people in the room who can tell us this is the short line. I want to be clear. We create brave spaces not only to stand in solidarity with those who are impacted by the prison industrial complex, but we also stand with those whose lives are being destroyed by racism, by transphobia, by immigration, to stand with people who believe in climate change and science as a means to divert a virus. Many of you do this work in your daily lives, and you may feel like this is a place you get to rest. I know this church has done work before, supporting immigrant families, supporting marriage equality, Black Lives Matter, stepping in bravely to create safe space for someone else. And my story bears witness. Creating brave space is never done. I have been a Unitarian Universalist my entire life, and I still did not know about the prison industrial complex. Brave space is still needed to talk about clean jobs and the Green New Deal, about bail and parole reform, about Illinois having a fair graduated tax. It takes courage. Courage in spaces like this congregation to be able to be willing to see the world as it is rather than the comfortable place we are encouraged to inhabit. It takes listening to each other and hearing hard truths of others' lives. It takes allowing your community to be a messy human place, not to celebrate messiness, but to allow ourselves to see what others see and experience. When we create this courageous, brave space in places like this community, we actually become truly welcoming. Because once we have this brave space, people see that those conversations happen here, and they feel welcomed in. Here, we take responsibility for our own challenging ways so that someone else has safety. We're going to talk about looting and Black Lives Matter and Green New Deal and all of those things so that we know where our lines are and we know how it is that we stand in this world. When we sublimate our need for comfort in favor of someone else's ability to survive and thrive, then we are creating the beloved community that affirms justice and the worth and dignity of every person. We do this work here so that we can be true partners in the world. We practice brave space in our communities so that we can also be true partners in the world. We do this because being safe when safety is not needed sucks the very life from our bones. If all that we are is just a safe place, when do we start looking like that soul-sucking place of needing to be only in control and have the power to live only as we think. This kind of safety, the safety of privilege, can corrupt life by never allowing us to be brave. Take the risks here in this community and in your lives to create brave space. Do something. Have conversations here about voting, about fair tax, about parole, all of those things. Have conversations here so that you can take those conversations out into your neighborhoods, out into your families, out into those spaces where you might even suspect that somebody in the crowd needs a true partner that they can stand with and stand in solidarity about a truth. Living and risking your own safety for love, for community, for justice in this world. Living bravely asks us to give up our safety in favor of freely experiencing what living together with courage might look like. Let us be brave so others can be safe. Let us be brave so others have a true partner. Let us be brave here so that we can take that bravery out into a world that is in need of our witness.
So you speak to me of sadness and the coming of the winter. Fear that is within you now that seems to never end. And the hopes that you've forgotten. You tell me that you need me now, and you want to be my friend, and you wonder where you're going, where's the rhymes, where's the reasons, and it's you cannot accept. It is here we must begin to seek the wisdom of the children and the graceful way of flowers in the wind. For the children and the flowers are my sisters and my brothers. Their laughter and their loveliness would clear a cloudy day, like the music of the mountains and rainbow. They're a promise of the future and a blessing for today. Though the cities start to crumble and the towers fall around us, the sun is slowly fading and it's colder than the sea. It is written from the desert to the mountains, they shall lead us by the hand and by the heart. They will comfort you and me in their innocence and trusting. They will teach us to be free. For the cheers are my sisters and my brothers. Their laughter and their loveliness would clear a cloudy day. And the song that I am singing is a prayer to non-believers. Come and stand beside us, we can find a better way.
Thank you so much, Candy. know that there would be a round of applause if we were all here together. I have a few announcements here. My first announcement is please read now that was sent this morning with the order of service, and also in the bulletin. I know of several upcoming events in the fellowship and in the community that will allow us to be true partners and maybe even create some brave space. I want to remind you that we do have 3 Zoom links, one for RE gatherings, and that's Jody has that link. If you want to participate, please talk with her. One for internal CUF gatherings like committees and groups. And I and Jean Basanta and Amy Weber have that link, and so does Martha Shum. So you can always contact any one of us if you don't already have that. And of course, the public gathering one, which you use to get on this, and you use it to get on Vespers and also Social Hour. And again, I'm inviting you to Vespers online or outdoors here at CUF this Wednesday evening. I want to let you know that Reverend Mooney recorded a wonderful story called Ron's Big Mission, which was shared at the pop-in this morning, the RE pop-in. Amy will have it up on our YouTube channel soon. I really encourage anyone who needs an inspiring, true story of bravery to check it out. At coffee hour this morning, in addition to our guest minister, Reverend Mooney, we will have Dee Evans, one of our 4 Eden seminarians who are doing a collaborative internship with several UU congregations, including ours this year. So we'll have a chance to get to know her a little bit. And now I would like to thank very much our musicians this morning, Candy Davis, and our choir director. Thanks to Amy Weber and Linda Linson, our Zoom co-host this morning. An extra special gratitude to our guest minister, Reverend Kay Mooney, for leading this service, especially her loving and challenging message. And thanks to all who are part of this service this morning, which is all of you here. In online fellowship this morning. Newcomers, we're very happy that you joined us, and please put your questions, comments, and or contact info into the chat box below, and we'll follow up. We look forward to chatting with you in the coffee hour following the service. Our time together isn't over. Now let's join Stephanie Reese in singing This Little Light of Mine, which I see as an anthem for those creating and being in brave space, keeping in mind this comes out of the slavery period. So lift that up as you are singing along.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it
there. That was great. Now, Reverend Mooney will give the spoken benediction in just a second. Immediately afterward, we'll sing blessings of love. Words will be on the screen. And immediately after that, again, coffee hour. So now, if you're with someone who you can safely join hands with, please do, or turn your palms up to receive and give the benediction.
These words in benediction are from the Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May Love's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
Amen. Go in peace with love for justice. See you at coffee hour. Just stay right here.